Over my years as a realtor in Waterloo region, I've had the pleasure of meeting plenty of successful person. Here are some of their stories. Welcome to People Around Town. I'm here with Jordan Palmer, Senior Vice President at Cushman, Wakefield in Waterloo region. Jordan, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you. Very happy, in fact. This is actually the first time I've ever done this podcast, and there wasn't a person I wanted to know more about industrial real estate, as exciting as it might be,
All right.
as yourself. He is an industrial leasing and sales specialist here in Waterloo region. Look forward to learning something along with you from Jordan. So I'm going to lead off with this. I understand that you went to University of Guelph.
Yes, I did.
For real estate and housing. And even though I'm a realtor, that never even crossed my mind. Like, what brought that about?
Started actually in the marketing program for the first year and met some people that were in the real estate program. There was a co-op option with that program as well, and heard about some pretty cool job opportunities with some of these folks. And I said, I got to make the switch.
So what was it about those people? Was it just the excitement in what it was, or like what? Or are they just cool people? And you're like, those are my people. These marketing people are nerds. Like, what's the deal?
Yeah, I couldn't do the marketing. No. Actually, one of my close friends was in the real estate program. So we've known each other since we were like 4 years old. So I didn't really understand how specific they got into their course load in terms of, the analytics on the real estate side. I didn't really give it a whole lot of thought. But he was mentioning some of the courses they were doing and felt that, hey, maybe it's something I got to look into. So made the switch for second year and did the co-op.
So was it the commercial edge of it that jumped into your mind first, or is it just real estate as a whole? Like what?
Real estate as a whole, I don't think there was at the time, I didn't really think about, whether getting into residential or getting into commercial. It was just kind of from a macro view, like real estate, just getting to understand a little bit better. Actually, when I was a kid and going into high school and whatnot, the thought of becoming an architect was something that was kind of in the back of my mind. And then when looking into schools and seeing the course load for becoming an architect, it was a lot of like physics and maths and all that. And not to say I can't do simple math, but it was definitely a lot more on the science and physics side of it.
Yes.
So pivoted and thought I'd get in more business.
Well, with that in mind, like in terms of the architecture design portion of it, do you see any parallels or crossover with what you're doing now? Do you find yourself sort of scheming up anything for any clients?
Definitely get involved in a lot of building attributes and specifications. Really enjoy dealing with new construction projects. So seeing kind of the project from paper to ground up construction. Really, really enjoy that. I mean, on the industrial side of things, it's basically you're dealing with a box. So it's nothing too complex, but, I do find some of these boxes, the large facilities quite attractive.
No, I don't think that's fair to yourself to say that, because when I even firstly, as a young rookie realtor, you think you can do everything, and then quickly you realize that specialists are special for a reason. And you have floor loads, you have like bay heights and all these things. That's part of the same specifications anyways that you would have, somewhat have been. It's different than building a beautiful property over a lake, fair enough. But
for sure. Just leave the liability to the contractor at the end of the day.
So when you're designing something, how many times are you, say, helping with the design for a company that's going to build to use it for themselves versus, a company that just builds?
Yeah, so there's kind of a couple different aspects when you're dealing with industrial construction. One is looking at building speculatively. So you're building for a large pool of tenants. You're not necessarily building for one specific user in mind. So you're looking at specifications of the building that have a large, let's call it, they're adaptive and they're usable for majority of a tenant mix. And then there's what's called build to suit, design build, where a contractor's not going to pull the trigger until they have a plan with a specific user. So it could be they've got a different floor load, or they've got different bay sizes that they need, different clear height requirements, sprinklers, etc. So, I mean, a lot of that falls on the contractor dealing with the tenant, but we can get involved from a perspective of telling the user or the developer, what we think would be good to do. What attributes to a building do we think are going to be future proofing the building?
Okay, so if that's for the developer's standpoint, when you go back to that build to suit, sorry, not that's build to suit, the whole spec side of it, which is something that's a little bit different to me. I know what a spec home is. You have a piece of land that somebody owns, and they say, I want to build this out to sell or lease out to make money, right? What sort of metrics are pulled to decide, okay, what type of use would best suit building something to spec, which wouldn't be perfect for everybody, but probably good enough for many, if you will. Do you know what I mean by that question?
Yeah, so I would say, kind of the common theme these days is having good clear height. So a lot of these warehousing, manufacturing facilities typically have a minimum of 32-foot clear height. So we say clear height, we mean under joist. So I would say clear height is definitely one attribute and specification that falls into a lot of the discussion. Power, what electrical service is required for a building. So, for a lot of warehousing, generic warehousing distribution clients, they just need enough power to basically turn the lights on.
Sure.
Maybe have some packaging machines and or maybe for their tow motors. So it's pretty light.
Okay.
You get into manufacturing customers, they can be anywhere from needing north of 1200 amps, 600 volts, getting up to, in some cases, like 10,000 amps. So I think you got to find a balance. You got to find a good size. I would say, for a large building, an investor developer right now, they're probably not putting much less than like a 2,500 amp service in for like 100 to 200,000 feet.
Yes.
The other thing that comes into play, which is a whole nother discussion, is ESG initiatives. So dealing with environmentally sustainable guidelines. So, some of these new buildings, they've got to have, EV chargers. If they're going for carbon certified programs, the building's got to have the ability to take on potentially down the road solar panels.
Wow.
So there's a lot more. And a lot of the times, instead of having like natural gas heaters, they've got to have electric heaters. So there's other things that drive
For
power.
that sort of square footage.
Correct. Other things that, they need more power just for the sake of running a building that's not as dependent on natural gas and other elements. So
Wow. So, okay, you've got that. How involved are you in this design process? Do a lot of people say, hey, just give me the land, I know what I want to build? Or for longtime clients, are you always sort of called upon to see what the market is requiring?
yeah, I would say any chance we can get, we're trying to add value and let clients, landlords, developers, owners know what's common, what's in the now, what's future proofing, what there's demand for. So, more times than not, we'll engage a engineer or an architecture firm. There's quite a few out there that, they'll already have their book of tricks in terms of, what they recommend.
Yes.
So we'll work hand in hand with them to, make sure that the building that's going up is, first of all, for us, if we're leasing it,
Yes.
making
Something
sure
you're happy to. Yeah.
it's going to be leasable and it's going to attract, call it 95% of tenants,
Yes.
majority of the market. So,
Okay. So I know you've done some massive deals, like massive deals, and the numbers are foreign to me, which is fine because I'm just a lowly residential realtor. But outside of like the biggest deal you've done, what deal have you done makes you the most proud?
yeah, there's been fortunate to be involved in some good sized deals. I would say one that strikes a chord was a site we sold a client in Cambridge over at 770 Boxwood.
Okay.
It was a 15-acre piece of land that we carved off of a data center, actually a former BlackBerry data center, and took a while to negotiate the terms on the land, but eventually we did it and sold it. The plan was to go speculatively to build 250 to 300,000 square feet on the site.
So spec means build, find tenant later.
Correct.
Correct.
Build it and they will come.
Yes.
And along the way, we had a couple groups that were looking at it. One group in particular was a group out of Alberta and a manufacturing customer. And we flew out, toured their facility, pretty far along the road with them. And so it was going to be more of a build to suit because they had some specific requirements and things they needed the building for their own use. That blew up. And while we were kind of involved with arranging that lease, we ended up having Toyota that came to the table.
Oh, nice.
Which, you know, obviously it's like, oh, yeah, Toyota, that'd be a nice tenant to have.
Yes.
So they needed a facility for their part sequencing operation. It needed to be off-site, and it was managed by a third-party warehousing group, logistics group. So, yeah, happened to be, we had a site that was about 300, 400 meters from the mothership there in Cambridge. So logistically, it checked off the box for being nice and close. You know, they're big organizations, so there was some holding hands, and it took a while to kind of get to the finish line, but we ended up coming to a design and a plan that made sense for them. It's a smaller building. They needed about 250,000 feet instead of 300,000 feet, but we ended up having about a half-acre component that was for truck parking. So they needed some like ancillary trailer parking on the property. So yeah, we finally got to the end of the goal line on the deal terms, and start to finish, I mean, from the arranging the land sale to finalizing that lease and building actually being built and lease commencement date, like we were probably in the range of almost like 3.5 years.
So I'm sure during that 3.5 years, there was some hand-holding time with your landlords, if you will.
Yeah.
Because probably pretty stressful. So when the plug was pulled, you guys were in design phase of the build, or was this during the build-out portion?
Still design phase.
Phase.
Yeah, they weren't under construction
So
yet,
that's good. Okay.
Yeah, we were lucky to... Yeah, I think a lot of the business is timing, musical chairs, and we got lucky on that one, so...
And what was your... Did they flat out say this wouldn't work for me, or did they start asking sort of weird questions that let you know that maybe we should start hunting elsewhere?
Yeah, I think just probably similar to your industry. You start getting delayed responses, and you start kind of just through experience and time again, you're like, oh, it's taking a little bit longer to get responses. It used to be like within 2 days, and now it's a couple weeks. So we kind of knew that there was a chance. I think that one company, they had some funding and some things behind the scene that weren't going exactly the way they expected.
Correct.
So yeah, we were kind of reading between the lines, and maybe that wasn't the right fit. But we used that as kind of a crutch to get what we deemed to be a better operator for the building, and ultimately worked out. Sounds
like you found it.
We did.
So, okay, I'm going to ask one question that probably leads into the next question to some degree. What is your most memorable moment, or the most fun moment, or the most rewarding moment you had in the last 12 months?
Ooh.
I'll let you think about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Or like, that was cool.
Yeah. Well, actually, kind of a similar client. Well, not similar client, the exact same client that we worked on the project we just talked about. We were able to sell another parcel of land to in Cambridge over at Town Line Pine Bush. So kind of feels like a similar vibe and what we were doing before. We've got plans to go on spec for up to 300,000 square feet between two buildings.
Wow.
And we've got a few groups that are actually kicking around that, they've got a little bit of longer lead time, but may be open to looking at this as a build-to-suit design build. So it's land that we sold. We've been working with that owner for a while on these lands, the old Kelleher's site towards Pine Bush Town Line.
Yes.
And the announcement came out about the tax increase, the capital gains increase. So these guys, they had plans of leasing and building themselves. I think they came to the conclusion that we've got some other projects on the go. We probably should, look at focusing on more of our core GTA projects rather than this. Can you find us a buyer? So their whole MO is we'd like to try to get this thing closed before the government amends the capital gains taxes. So
Yes.
I remember from start to finish, like it came together pretty quick. We were probably inside of 2 months from negotiating an agreement of purchase sale and closing on the land. And I think it closed like June 20 something, 22nd, like 2024. So it was pretty fast.
So,
and then end of the day, that didn't matter anyways. It seems like we're floating until January for taxes. But
that floats and that floats. But the funny thing is that deal came together that quickly. But it's funny, in like big bold letters, I just see the word trust. And would there be any chance of that deal happening that quickly if you hadn't earned the trust of the clients through your work before?
Yeah, I think there definitely is a trust there. We've done a lot of transactions with that specific group. But yeah, I think, it's no different than you. Just don't sugarcoat anything. Like if ultimately we didn't feel it was the right deal for the client.
Correct.
And it didn't pencil out, we would have been providing a different set of recommendations. We're pretty bullish on Southwest Ontario real estate, especially industrial real estate. We think long term that site's going to have, good value for the client. It was a reasonable deal. There's been a bit of even since kind of Q2 last year, things have kind of come down a little bit on the industrial front. There's a lot of things that are changing the landscape, but I think like everybody, as long as they look long term at their investments, not looking at this as a short term plan, especially with these developments that can take quite some time. I think long term, I think it'll be a project.
Yeah, but a downturn, that's like for your cost for rental per square foot, whatever. To me, if a client finds use in what the value is for that place at that time, also time is money. Just because it doesn't make sense for them to retool and move to another site just because it might be a teensy bit cheaper at that given moment, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the ability to execute and timing, I think, is very important with industrial real estate. There are some long lead times for certain projects and certain clients, but I would say majority of groups that we've seen in the last 12 months that are making decisions and actually taking net new space, they seem to be tied to contracts.
Yes.
So they've got a little bit of quicker turnaround in terms of when they need the building.
Time is money.
Yeah. So, that hasn't always been the case, but, just from my experience, I'm sure there's other guys that could tell you differently, but it seems like, the last 12 months, nobody's really taking space on speculatively. They've got to have either a contract in tow, business to require that space, as opposed to, hey, if we take this now, maybe, there's in 6 months the ability we might need it. That seemed to be the way it was for COVID.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of people
were
just
grabbing
taking,
whatever they can.
Grabbing what they could. Things were on a good roll. It was working out. And I think now people have kind of stepped back, look at their supply chains, and they're kind of analyzing, maybe we took on a little more than we could chew, or maybe we need to pivot. So,
yeah, the COVID thought process was a different thought process, and it was a different time.
But, yeah, for all of us, for you guys too.
Yeah, that was the new normal, but we're back to normal. Normal, maybe that's the case, and people are looking at their numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, so outside of the money, for lack of a better term, because to me, if you're working on a deal for the amount of time that you guys work on deals, 6 months, year, 2 years, 3 years, outside of that, what do you find is the most rewarding? What's the coolest part of your job?
Yeah, I think building long-standing relationships with clients. Some of these clients, like I've been with Cushman and Wakefield now for 11 years, and some of these clients I've had from more or less when I started. Mm-hmm. Why they wanted to deal with me then, I have no idea, but for a good portion of people that I connected with and built relationships with early in my career, we still are doing business together. So yeah, I think the really neat thing and rewarding thing is having trust with your clients, people that actually are appreciating and listening to what you're saying.
Yes.
They take your recommendations to heart. I think another thing too is just specifically on the industrial side of things is job creation. It's amazing to see how from start to finish, whether it's a warehouse or it's a manufacturing building, even warehousing now, like you could do a good sized transaction. It's bringing hundreds of people into that facility. Like there's still the whole concept of having an automated warehouse. Like there's still very much a lot of hands that are involved with the process. So I think the job creation for me with industrial was something that really was meaningful. And, it's cool to see, officers a lot as well, but to literally see, hey, we're opening up a new facility and, we need to go on a hiring spree, 50, 100 people to, get this plan up and running.
And those are 50, 100 like real jobs.
Yeah, it's like in a lot of cases net new jobs. So it's pretty cool to be a part of.
And then they call me to buy houses.
Yes.
Man, you got
maybe we should have a better referral source.
You have to keep doing what you're doing. And without taking too much time, I am so pleased that you came to join me there, Jordan.
No, I appreciate it, Darryl.
This has been entertaining and informative and part one of many.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, pleasure.
Thanks, man.